right, folks, we are back here on WLTH 1371. The Scott and the Rev. Unfortunately, the Rev is feeling a little bit under the weather. Could not be with us today. But on the phone, I have one Mr. Kenneth Joseph. How's it going, brother?
Hey, how's it going? How's it going, man?
Yes, Mr. Kenneth Joseph is the director of the new movie, The Johnny Jackson Story. Wow.
Yeah.
So congratulations on the doc, man.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
It's all good. How long did you work on it?
All together, I want to say maybe like a good 3 years of just putting it together, getting the parts, filming it and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. How long have you been making movies in general?
I'd say a total of maybe like 10 years, just, putting it, filming piece by piece by piece. I did the Gordon Keefe Untold Stories of the Jackson 5.
Yes.
Yeah, those are my favorite.
Yes, tell us about that because, Gordon Keefe was my cousin, and Gordon Keefe was a big part of the city of Gary, of not just city of Gary, but here in Northwest Indiana, our music scene, our culture. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, when I met Mr. Gordon Keefe, it was kind of amazing because he didn't really want to like open up, but then again, once he opened up, it was just like paradise.
Mm-hmm.
He started telling me all of the stories, all of the things that happened to him, right? And I was just overwhelmed, and I was driven, driven to bring it out. And I noticed that these stories I call documovies could eventually evolve into an actual inspiration to be a motion picture. So we start filming, and month to month I would come out to Gary, Indiana, in different locations, and all of these other, I call them historical stars. I started filming them back to back, and I was shooting them inside of the interior of their homes, where people like to be comfortable at.
Yeah.
And, as I was filming it, this project was just growing, and it was, just talking to me. So, shot maybe like seven episodes of it, and put it out on YouTube, and kind of made a little bit of noise, somewhat. Yeah.
Right. So, You're not originally from Gary.
No, not at all.
Where did you come from?
Originally from Louisiana. I'm a Southern boy.
Oh, okay, all right. What made you come here to Gary?
Mr. Gordon Keefe. I mean, when I met him, at the time I was living in Chicago, and when I met him, I was just overwhelmed. I didn't know anything about Gary attached to Chicago, and didn't know that that's where the Jacksons came from. So when I heard of Mr. Gordon Keefe, and when I and met him, it was just, I was amazed. So we started filming, and Mr. Keefe suggested that it'd be best that I come down, like every weekend and shoot. And from that's how it was. That's what brought me to Gary, Mr. Gordon Keefe.
Wow, he was such a galvanizing figure here in the city of Gary for so many people. I remember when we would have a lot of events like Christmas events for children, he would come out and he would judge the dance contest and the singing contest, and he was always trying to make these kids feel like like stars. And he would love to tell them, hey, you could be the next Michael Jackson. And these kids would just melt. These kids would just melt. That's the type of person he was. So it does not surprise me that he was willing to share so much of himself with a person like you. What did that mean for you at the time when you were getting started?
I mean, it was overwhelming because, again, Mr. Keefe was like, at first, like I said, he would work in riddles. He'd tell you a little bit, and then he'd pull back, and he'd be like, hey, now you're going to have to pay me for this one. And then one day he just came out and just said, God told him that he has to share. I didn't know what he was talking about, but then he started giving me more and more information, and that's what he was talking about. And that one part that led to, Johnny Jackson, the drummer. So as I look at, Mr. Gordon Keefe, you look at anything that he talks about, especially during those times, that's the era. So that's what Johnny Jackson comes from, the umbrella of Steel Town Records. So it was just one day I was just looking at all the footage, and I was like, man, I've been playing with this footage for a long time. And it seems like right after Mr. Keefe passed, then that's when I was really driven and motivated to really come out of the creative closet with all of these footages that I had shot. You know what I mean?
Right.
The challenge then was I didn't have a good monetary budget, and I couldn't find. Of course, you have to pay people to, like edit your work.
Mm-hmm.
So once I got the money straight, the monetary straight, that's when I started getting people, teams together, creative teams. And we started putting this together. There's editors. I think the movie consists of maybe like 4 editors.
Mm-hmm.
I think one in Great Britain, one in India, and 2 in the Chicago area.
Wow. What is the process
alone.
in finding a good editor? How do you know who's a good editor, or exactly what is that process? Do you work with them on the editing process, or do you just give them the freedom to decide what's important and what's not important?
I do both.
Mm-hmm.
I do both, but since they are the ones that do that has the final say so, that could make or break your stuff, you got to give people a little bit of leeway and
Mm-hmm.
fit where they fit in. So it's a combination of me pre-editing with them, and then kind of letting them have a little bit of that creative control of things. But how do you know it's a good editor? It's just whenever they can see your work,
Mm-hmm.
and they know that they have to put your work out there, and they can tell you what you did, what you didn't do, blah, 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 blah. Those are signs. And I was getting these guys on LinkedIn, or was it LinkedIn? Yeah.
Right.
And that's where you can find these guys. I mean, because they worked on major projects. They worked on, they are award-winning editors, things
Right.
of that nature. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, LinkedIn is a very helpful tool. I'm on it all the time. It's a very helpful tool. What exactly made you want to tell this story of Johnny Jackson? What was it about Johnny specifically and his story that was attractive to you?
To the fact that Johnny was he was worldwide, and he was a hell of a drummer, one of the best drummers in the world. And he just didn't get his recognition. Like when he left Gary, it was really known as Johnny and the Jackson 5.
Mm-hmm.
So like when he went to Motown had their thing going. Their intent was like, you can't do that. So he never got his recognition. When you watch him on stage, when you watch the Jacksons on stage, very rarely, ABC, American Bandstand, you rarely saw Johnny, unless they asked about it, or unless Michael was introducing him. But other than that, it wasn't that. He never got his recognition. He came back home. He was let go by Joe Jackson, and he struggled. That really was very emotional, and I really put myself into his shoes. Can you imagine what it's like to once be a part of the biggest record industry in the world and the Black iconic family,
Right.
and to be able to have traveled, the entire world, and all those things to occur. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. It's I grew up here in the city of Gary, and there's all these figures here in the city of Gary who knew the Jacksons, who grew up with the Jacksons, and in some ways feel like they were chewed up and spit out by the Jackson machine. Were you able to get into contact with any of those types of people?
Well, no, but I'm pretty. I knew the Jacksons knew who Kenneth Joseph was because they knew the man behind Kenneth Joseph, Gordon Keith.
Right.
So they knew, and they know about me. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, I was so headstrong with Mr. Keith. I didn't, believe in. I didn't believe in. How can I say this? I did not believe in letting things. How can I say this? I was so headstrong into Mr. Gordon Keith. I was into what he was saying. But as time went by, I wanted, it was fascinating to just leave the door open for everybody else involved. You have more than one story, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But they never step forward. Because you think about the concept, they will never step forward. Because anything that goes back to Steeltown and the history of Steeltown, the Jacksons have kept that away for so long. That is how they have rise to the top. And they were, of course, told by Berry Gordy not to mention, the history of Steeltown. So that's why they would never want to come forward. You know what I mean? But I did leave the door open, because there's so many other stories from other perspectives about the Jacksons, about Steeltown.
Wow. I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted you to talk about what were some of the trials and tribulations that you had to go through to tell this particular story. Like you said, the Jacksons are very protective, and they're very, they have a tendency, they'll go after you, okay? So what exactly was it, what was it exactly like for you telling this story, and what did you have to go through?
Well, first of all, when you think about it, it doesn't matter. I mean, who they are, what they know. The thing is, if you're telling this story and it has a purpose and it needs to be told, and everything that you're telling or you have to tell is nothing wrong, untrue. I pretty much never really cared about what they could do or come after me, because the story of defamation of someone's character, you got to be able to prove that that's what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and I watched what Gordon went through for many years in dealing with that situation, and a lot of people in here in this part of the country, this part in our region, were just like, hey, just give it up, man, just give it up. And I think that to a large extent, he felt like this is a part of my legacy, so it was extremely hard for him to let go of something that he was a part of, that he was being written out of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So I never really worried about them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you look at the history. Yes, they were aggressive. Yes, they did run people off. Yes, they did buy their way. But time will catch up with you regardless. It's this thing called karma, and and the above. You can't run from that, and yourself. So as far as that, wasn't worried about them. The thing is just trying to get it out there, and just seeing the mindset of people. People believe in the Jacksons. They grew up with them. They let them into their livelihoods. They can't do no wrong. Those kinds of mental perceptions. But the media is a different agenda. The media is more influential and powerful and persuasive. And a lot of times with the media, we all know that's not true. You know what I mean? So the thing is, the story needs to be told, good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think it's just fair to the fans. They need to know.
Absolutely. Now, you never got to meet Johnny, right?
No.
Okay. How many people in the documentary actually knew him personally, or did you get his family involved?
I love the questions you're asking. That's wonderful. Pretty much the majority of the people in the docu-movie I call it historical stars of Johnny, or childhood fabric of Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty like there is Smoothie Jackson. That's Johnny's cousin. He's in the docu-movie. Milton Crump, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yes.
If I said his name right, he's in the movie. Mr. Robert Height, he's in the movie. Raynard Jones is mentioned in the movie. Things of that caliber, and stuff like that. They're in the movie. Now, me trying to reach out to the family of Johnny, that's what I wanted to do when Miss Keefe was alive. And this was a big, big, big goal, I met Johnny's sister, I think it was Jackie, because of Miss Keefe. But she never really wanted to speak on that, because she told Miss Keefe that she promised Johnny that she would never tell anything about the Jacksons.
Really?
So, yeah, so she wanted to keep it secret. So I asked her if I could interview her sister. So she was like, well, I'll talk to them and see. But it was 3 other sisters or 2 other sisters, if I'm not mistaken, but they never responded back. I mean, they responded back, but they never gave in, for me to interview them. Johnny Jackson's son, we were communicating on Facebook for a while. And at the time, he thought that what I was doing was good.
Right.
But when he mentioned that he was going to go back to Gary to visit his auntie Jackie, Johnny's sister, and then when he never answered anymore, then I'm pretty sure the influences of that. Johnny Jackson's wife, I think Susan Jackson, the Jewish lady, I spoke to her on phone, and she didn't want to. She was emotional to start when I mentioned, Johnny.
Right. Is there a specific? Did they give you reasons why so many of them were sort of cagey about opening up about what he experienced with the Jacksons or whatever?
No. It was just Jackie. She just literally said it out. That she promised Johnny she wouldn't talk about the Jacksons because Johnny felt like the Jacksons gave him his career. You know what I mean?
Oh,
and
right.
So even with that, at some point it did hurt Johnny. But I think at some point he was dealing with that. He was dealing with the hurt. But at the same time, he still wanted to show love to the Jacksons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was cool and that was good. But everyone else, I don't know, what was really the purpose. You know.
Mm.
So the thing is, because I didn't want to, for the world to see me as some independent, unknown, or growing to be known filmmaker who was just trying to grab for fame like like anybody else. So I thought it would be good to have family members, right, of Johnny on there, making it stronger and solid.
Right.
But but I was still motivated and still was driven because the story was that powerful enough that I didn't need them. I could still go on and tell the story.
Right. Do you think any of them had been maybe intimidated to talk about the Jacksons? Maybe did you?
Yeah, I think so because a lot of times you get to know some of them or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. They're totally influenced, or like they were good friends with them, or they were what you call that, the hands that feed you.
Yeah.
Jackson's had some kind of hand in it, taking care of them, looking out for them or whatever. And when you do those kind of things, you just can't do that. So that was very much understandable. Yeah. That was very much understandable.
Right. Now you said he came back to Gary and he struggled a little bit. Does the documentary cover a lot about what those years were like? After being famous, successful, being around the world.
It does. Yes, it does. I don't want to go too much into it, but yes, it does. Yeah, it does. Strongly, it does. Believe you me. It's going to catch the audience by surprise, and pretty much make them say, well, more like, that's interesting, but I didn't know that. Like, wow,
right.
Stuff like that.
Well, I definitely understand that. Now, I mean, he ultimately did not live a full life. People here in the city of Gary know exactly that he did unfortunately pass away pretty violently. Is that covered? Is the context behind that and what led to that covered in the documentary, or is that something that you sort of wanted to skirt away from?
Okay, say that again.
Well, I mean, he died very violently, unfortunately. Is that something that you covered in the documentary a lot, or is that something that you sort of wanted to shy away from because it's so unpleasant?
Say that part again. I'm sorry.
I was just saying that because he died violently. Because he died violently, is that something that you covered? Did you give sort of the background as to how he died?
Yes. That's in there as well. It's in there as well. It's very deep. It's very sad, very deep. Very sad, very deep.
Right.
Yeah, it's in there.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because a lot of times, and this is unfortunate, especially here in the city of Gary. I know you're not from here. I'm from here. A lot of people are defined by how they die here in the city of Gary, and we talk about such and such was murdered, and a lot of young people, a lot of other people. Whereas this guy was one of the best drummers in the world, and when I read about his passing away, that was just sort of incidental almost to how he passed away, and I definitely wanted to know exactly if the documentary was going to handle that in terms of him being, not letting that define him as a musician or as a person.
Right.
Now there's another musician that sort of got shake who was from here in Gary, started out with the Jacksons and was sort of shaken off by the Jacksons, named in some ways Ronnie Rancifer. He ended up going on to have a pretty successful music career. Did you make any overtures? Is he in the documentary? And if not,
I wanted.
Yeah.
That's very nice of you to ask. I wanted to put him in a documentary because Mr. Gordon Keefe had told me about him, and he said that he may not want to do it because he's already doing a book.
Right.
So he may not want to do it. So I spoke with him, and he had asked me about, if I knew a certain party, and I did. And he said he'll get back to me, but he never did.
Right.
He never did. So he's mentioning that through one of the key speakers on, there, who's there. He's mentioned, but it would have been great to have had him as well. You know what I mean? Wonderful. Like my intent was to get everyone involved, but again, and a lot of it had to do with, if somebody's writing a book, you got to think about it. If somebody's writing a book, you got to think about it. See, this is how I looked at it. You got to be a fair person now.
Right.
Now, the thing is, who am I, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even from here. And then I wasn't even born, during that time. So I knew I had to work extra hard, right, to make sure that whatever comes out of my mouth or whatever I tell the story about, it has to be right on it. Because for those simple facts. So at the same time, I put myself in Ronnie Rancher's shoes. Who is this guy? I don't know who the hell this young buck is trying to, want to, know about my stuff. Blah, 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 blah. This is all mine. So I understood that, So again, the magic of this thing was, it was more like, it's cool to have had him, but you don't need him because you could do this.
Right.
And that's how that evolved. You know what I mean?
Oh, right.
But it would have been good.
Right. Can you stick around? We got to go to a commercial break really quick. Can you stick around for another segment?
Sure.
It's all good. All right. Please, folks, give us a call, 219-885-13.